I first went into Tales from the Borderlands with no expectations. By the time I finished the first episode, I was pleasantly surprised, and I thought I understood what I was in for in the coming episodes. But by the time I had finished episode 5, Tales from the Borderlands was so much more than I ever thought it would be. This is the best story that's been told all year, and I'm gonna try and tell you why. But you're going to need to keep an open mind. A Telltale Borderlands game didn't seem that enticing to me either. This is an intro to one of the episodes. Look at the production values, look at the creativity and genius oozing from your screen. A lot of people will think that I'm exaggerating here, and I'll admit that, yeah, I'm gushing, but it's deserved. If you've not played Tales, you're missing out on one of the best video game stories of all time. This isn't even my favorite of the 5 intros, but it's the only one I can show to you other than the episode 1 intro that doesn't really spoil anything. Now, I'm not a very big fan of comedies. I don't really like the idea of a movie or video game story that only exists to make you laugh. On the surface, Tales seems like it's just that, but underneath the superbly written layer of humor is a host of charming characters and surprisingly dark and tender moments. Sure, the engine still has those moments where it just seems to seize up and snap like an old hard drive, and for much of the game the choices don't matter. It carries with it the same luggage that other Telltale games do, but there's so much it does that separates it from its siblings. The art style is Borderlands Ii, which seems to be Telltale's forte recently. I personally think it looks great, but I know that there are people out there who are tired of Telltale's comic book look. The thing about the presentation that has blown me away this time, though, is the creative direction that they have taken with the cinematography. You'll notice the camera whizzing around, sections of slow motion, and the action is captured extremely well. The designs of the characters are distinct and unique, and the environments lend themselves into that. Where the presentation falls flat is on the technical side of things. On the console, I know that there are some frame drops in areas, and on both the console and PC, the engine tends to run quite poorly. There's a lot of stuttering in places, and while this isn't presentation related, I heard that there were some save file losses for people on PC. The score is fantastic, there's awesome licensed music to go with the wonderful episode intros, very little not to love. I mentioned that choices don't really matter. Like any other Telltale game, they don't affect the way the overall plot pans out. That said, really more than any other Telltale game before it, I felt like I got the best payoff from the sum of my actions. In the 5th episode, there's a particular moment where some of your choices can open up options that change the way the moments leading up to the ending pan out. That sounds like an odd way of putting it, but I'm dancing around spoilers here. Your choices will not change the ending, but they affect enough elements in the final episode to make you feel like your experience was fairly unique. Other than the final episode though, your choices are there only to make you feel like you have control over the action, when in reality you really don't. But if we're talking about the plot when it comes to the set story, incredible. There's very little for me to criticize here. One thing that may have detracted from the stakes is the fact the story is being told by the 2 main characters. It means that there's very little to worry about when it comes to them, because you know that somehow or another they will survive. Granted, this restriction isn't placed on any of the other characters, so they certainly could be killed off. The thing is, the story being told this way is so integral, in my opinion, to the curve of the narrative, that the lack of dread for the 2 main characters was a worthwhile sacrifice. But overall, the plot is extremely engaging. Parts of it can be predictable, but then again, there were moments I didn't see coming at all. It ends conclusively with some hints at a sequel, but satisfying nonetheless. Most importantly though, near the end, the thing that the characters were fighting for resonated with me entirely. At the end of the game, I felt so in line with the characters and their motivations that I felt myself cheer on the inside for them to win. That's a really difficult thing to do, and the only other time that Telltale did this for a lot of people was in the first season of The Walking Dead, when Clementine was your motivation, and many people could get behind that. It's an extremely powerful thing when you agree relentlessly with what the characters of a story are doing. And of course, the characters need to be incredible in order to form that kind of connection between the player and the walking pixels on screen. Every single character in Tales is extremely likable. Some are better than others, of course, but even the most boring characters in Tales have charm to them, and I think it's the humor. I think it's the way the characters act with one another, and the fact that the writing is so good I found myself in stitches that really makes it feel like you're hanging out with an old group of friends when you play this game. And so, when one of them is in trouble, you as the player feel entirely emotionally invested in saving those characters. The two weakest characters are the two main characters that you play as. I also think the next weakest characters are their respective sidekicks. It's interesting that the characters closest to the player felt the least interesting and compelling to me. They're not bad characters, and they do interesting things and say funny stuff.
Computer, enhance.
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 But pale when comparing them to the huge number of colorful side characters. The four core characters just lack the distinctness of the others. That said, I want to mention again that they are still very much likable, but their character types aren't massively fresh. When it comes to the side characters, who are introduced slowly as the story progresses, it's impossible to accurately convey how wonderful they are without experiencing it for yourself.
It's very nice to meet you. How is your day going?
It's a mixed bag.
And even more than that, many of the characters I'm labeling side characters become increasingly more important as the game goes on, so calling them just side characters is kind of hard to justify. Frankly, this is one of the best games of the year, and that's saying a lot because 2015 has been an insanely good year for gaming. And even more so, the more I think about it, the more it becomes one of my favorite games of all time and one of my favorite stories of all time. The criticisms I have brought up in this review, while valid and certainly true, took a lot of time for me to come up with. I really love this game, and I urge you to play it if you value a good story. And this is coming from someone who openly says that he doesn't like comedies, because Tales is so much more than that. It's drama first, comedy second, and action third. So if you threaten to gouge my eye out and realize I wasn't really dead, I'd absolutely recommend this game 100%. Thanks for watching, see ya.